He grabbed her wrist hard and sneered loud enough for half the bus to hear. "Come on, pretty girl. Give me a smile." The girl with short blonde hair didn't flinch. Her piercing blue eyes turned slowly toward him, steady and sharp, as if she was calculating every breath he took. The other passengers shifted uncomfortably but stayed quiet, afraid of the tall thug with tattoos crawling up his neck. He leaned closer, his hot breath stinking of smoke. "Don't act shy, I'm talking to you." For a moment, she stayed silent, her expression unreadable, almost calm. Then she whispered, "Take your hand off me, if you want to keep it." The thug burst into laughter, his friends at the back snickering, thinking she was just bluffing. "What you gonna do? Call the cops?" he mocked, pressing her tighter against the window. But his grin faltered when she tilted her head slightly and smiled, a smile too cold for a normal girl. The dim lights flickered above, shadows dancing across her face, and for the first time someone noticed the way she adjusted her posture. Not like a victim, more like a predator waiting for the right second to strike. The thug's laugh echoed through the bus as he yanked harder on her wrist, making a few passengers gasp. "See? She's mine now," he shouted, showing off like a cheap king in front of strangers. The driver glanced nervously through the mirror but said nothing, too scared to interfere. The girl didn't resist. Instead, she leaned forward, her voice low and almost playful. "You really want to know what happens to men who touch me without asking?" The thug smirked, enjoying the attention. "Yeah? What, you'll cry to your mommy?" She chuckled, and that sound was so chilling that even the laughter from the back row stopped. Her piercing blue eyes locked on his throat, her gaze so intense he shifted slightly without realizing it. She finally spoke again, slow and deliberate. "I don't cry. I collect scars." He blinked, confused, as if trying to figure out whether she was crazy or dangerous. Passengers exchanged glances, whispering, sensing something wasn't normal about her calmness. The thug didn't like losing control, so he shoved her shoulder and barked, "Sit down and shut up before I really hurt you." She tilted her head, smiled wider, and said softly, "You have no idea who you just picked." He slammed his hand against the window beside her head, the glass rattling as a hush fell over the bus. "You think you're tough? You're just a scared little girl," he growled, his face inches from hers. The passengers looked away, some clutching their bags tighter, praying this wouldn't turn bloody. But she didn't blink. She simply whispered, "Last chance. Move your hand." He laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Her voice wasn't shaking. Her eyes weren't pleading. They were cold, sharper than a blade. "Or what?" he spat. She moved suddenly, quick as lightning, twisting his wrist so violently he yelped in shock. The bus jolted with gasps as he stumbled back, holding his arm like it had been snapped. "What the hell was that?" he barked, his friends halfway out of their seats but too stunned to step forward. She stood up slowly, brushing imaginary dust from her jacket, her expression calm, almost bored. "That," she said, "was a warning." Her blue eyes scanned the whole bus, landing back on the thug who now looked less sure of himself. A heavy silence followed, every passenger realizing this girl was far from ordinary. The thug's pride burned hotter than his pain. He clutched his wrist, eyes darting at the passengers who were whispering now, their fear slowly mixing with curiosity. "You think that little trick scares me?" he snarled, pulling a pocket knife from his jacket. Gasps filled the bus, and the driver shouted nervously, "Hey, no weapons in here!" but kept his foot on the pedal, too afraid to stop. The thug flicked the blade open with a snap, pointing it at her chest. "Let's see you smile now." She didn't step back. Instead, she leaned closer, her voice low and icy. "Knives don't scare me." "Men with knives? Scare easy!" He lunged, aiming for her shoulder, but she moved with frightening speed, catching his arm mid-swing and twisting it until the knife clattered to the floor. In one fluid motion, she kicked it under the seats and shoved him against the pole so hard the whole bus shook. His eyes widened as her grip tightened around his throat. Not shaking, not struggling, steady, practiced, merciless. For a second, her calm mask slipped, revealing a flicker of pure violence in her gaze that made even his friends freeze. The thug gasped for air, clawing at her wrist as his back slammed against the pole. His tough guy act crumbled, panic replacing arrogance. The bus had gone silent except for the squeal of metal on the road. One passenger whispered, She's killing him." But she loosened her grip just enough for him to breathe, her lips curling into a cold smile. "I warned you. You didn't listen." His knees buckled as she shoved him down onto the grimy floor, the once loudmouthed bully now coughing and humiliated at her feet. His friend stood frozen, eyes darting between the knife, under the seat and the girl, towering above him with predator's calm. She leaned closer, whispering just for him. "If I wanted you gone, you'd already be bleeding." He shivered, his bravado completely shattered. Passengers exchanged nervous glances, unsure if they should feel relieved or terrified. The thug, face red and drenched in sweat, tried to speak but only managed a weak growl. She stepped back slowly, her piercing eyes sweeping the bus, daring anyone else to test her. Nobody moved. Everyone now understood one thing clearly. This wasn't a victim. This was someone far darker. The silence didn't last long. One of the thug's friends cursed under his breath and stepped forward, fists clenched. "You think you're tough just because you got lucky? Let's see how you handle both of us." Another followed, blocking the aisle as if to trap her. Passengers gasped, some ducking in their seats, others pulling out phones desperate to record the chaos. She didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, like a predator measuring prey. The first man swung wildly, but she slipped, passed his punch and drove her, elbow into his ribs with bone-cracking precision. He doubled over, wheezing like his lungs had been crushed. Before the second one could react, she spun, her boot striking his knee sideways with a sickening pop. He collapsed, howling in pain, clutching his leg. The entire bus recoiled at the sheer efficiency of her moves. No wasted motion, no hesitation. She wasn't fighting like someone defending herself. She was dismantling them piece by piece. Even the thug on the floor stared in horror, whispering, "What?" "What are you?" She didn't answer. She just straightened her jacket and said calmly, "You made the mistake of thinking I was prey." The bus screeched to a halt at the next stop, and flashing red and blue lights flooded through the windows. 2 officers were already waiting outside. Passengers whispered nervously, some pointing toward the bruised thug on the floor. Seizing the moment, he staggered up, clutching his throat and crying out, "Officers! She attacked me. She's crazy! Arrest her before she kills someone!" The cops rushed inside, scanning the chaos. 2 men groaning on the floor, a knife under the seat, and a girl standing calm and unshaken. One officer moved toward her, hand on his cuffs, but she raised her hands slowly and spoke in a steady tone. "You really want to hear his story before mine?" The thug shouted louder, spitting lies. "She tried to kill me! She's dangerous!" The officer hesitated, until the girl finally pulled something from her jacket, a badge, gleaming under the bus lights. Gasps filled the bus. "Special Task Force," she said coldly, locking her eyes on the thug. "You just tried to mug the wrong person." The thug's face drained of color as the officer's expressions flipped from suspicion to shock. Passengers erupted in whispers, realizing the quiet woman they doubted was in fact the most dangerous person on that bus. The thug's knees buckled as the officers turned on him instead, grabbing his arms and snapping the cuffs tight around his wrists. He shouted and struggled, but his voice carried no weight anymore. His lies had crumbled in front of everyone. The passengers, who once sat frozen in fear, now watched with wide eyes as justice flipped so quickly. The officer read him his rights while another picked up the knife, shaking his head. The girl, still calm, adjusted her jacket and gave one last glance at the thug, who now looked smaller than ever, begging, "Please, I didn't know who you were." She leaned close enough for him to hear and whispered, "That's the problem. You thought power meant hurting people. Mine means stopping you." His face went pale as the cops dragged him out of the bus, his screams fading into the night. For a moment, silence filled the bus, heavy and surreal. Then a passenger broke it with shaky applause, soon followed by others until the whole bus was clapping. She didn't smile. Her eyes were still sharp, still carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much. But as the bus rolled forward again, she finally sat down, whispering to herself, "Monsters should always fear the quiet ones.